The Prime Minister's Surya Ghar Yojana is a scheme that not just provides renewable source of energy, but it also is on the easy of the pockets of the households. The scheme aims to provide free electricity to thousands. This is how the scheme works. The households will be provided with a subsidy to install solar panels on their roofs. Now, this subsidy will cover up to 40% of the cost of the solar panels for up to 1 kilowatts of capacity generation. The subsidy will increase to 60% for up to 2 kilowatts of capacity generation. The scheme will benefit 1 crore households across the country. It will save the government 75,000 crores per year in electricity costs. Let's take a look and discuss this in larger detail about how will this scheme be rolled out. What are the challenges in rolling out this scheme? Can households be convinced to convert to solar energy? How does this fulfill India's commitment towards renewable energy targets? And can India pioneer the solar energy consumption as well as exports? Let's start this conversation. Joining me on the telecast right now is Parag Mishra. He is the Managing Director of Jaganlight India Company, which is a government authorized vendor. Parag Mishra, the first hiccup that I at this point of time envisage for the government to roll out this scheme could be the hesitancy of households in our country to switch to renewable energy, to switch to solar power energy. How do you view the market right now? Okay, I don't have Parag Mishra right now with me, but Jaijit, quickly a response from you about this.
I don't think there'll be hesitancy per se. People do believe that solar is a better power solution and it's good for the environment, it's good for them. The challenge is more in the nitty-gritties, which is that how many of us really have access to the rooftop. Those who are living in apartment complexes, they really don't have access to the rooftop. Who owns those rooftops? And also, the level of the rooftops are different for different households, which means that there'll be shadow coming in from the next house onto your house, which therefore reduces the insulation coming in and therefore the ability to generate power. And those are concerns that the government has addressed, saying that we will not even do a test of how much of insulation is coming. If you have a rooftop, we'll set up the power plant, which is the solar panels. And I think that's a great idea. It will really spur the adoption of solar panels. Obviously, there are other challenges, as that there is no power generation during the night. I mean, there's maximum 8 hours of power generation in a day. But this all builds up towards a more carbon-friendly economy. And if you look at it from the perspective of what's really being spent, if you set up a coal-fired power plant, it costs roughly about 80,000 to a lakh per kilowatt of a coal-fired power plant. Here, the government is actually giving half of that money as subsidy to go ahead and set up this entire power plant, which is a solar power plant. And then there is no coal being fed. So there's no operational cost per se. There's very minimal operational cost. And the operational cost essentially is maintenance, cleaning up the solar panels, and so on and so forth. And therefore, it's a very, very smart way, a very cheap way, and a very economical way of generating a lot of solar power, which is eco-friendly. And I think there is absolutely no issue with this kind of power being generated.
Parag, quickly coming back to you about this entire scheme and the entire magnanimity, the growth with which India and the government at this point of time are looking at, because the larger goal over here is generation of renewable energy, generation of renewable sources of energy, and solar energy being amongst the most conducive form of renewable energy that India can at this point of time utilize, being a tropical country. Now, there has been the Global Solar Alliance that has also been pioneered by India with partnership from France. In a situation such as this, how does this scheme trickle down to the households, to the remotest part of the country? Challenges like Jaijit already mentioned, that there are going to be households which will not receive sunlight for 24 hours a day. There will have to be storage capacities that would have to be built. Can the people, can the citizens, can households then be convinced that solar power energy is in fact a better alternative to electricity how it is generated today?
Yes, ma'am. Good evening. Definitely, what the outcome and impact out from the policy, what government has forecast is addition of the 30 gigawatt of solar renewable energy, giving of 1000 billion units of electricity supply, and 720 million tons of carbon emission to be saved from the policy. This is the outcome I'm layout what is expected from the policy. Apart from what they are targeting is the 1 crore household customers, and mainly the target group is 1 kilowatt, 2 kilowatt, and 3 kilowatt, to which the government is giving the subsidy, and the subsidy counts for more than 60 to 70% of the total project cost. So at present, what the situation is in our country is we are giving a subsidized rate, tariff rate to these customers. What the government vision is to give a solar system which can generate at least 300 units to them on a monthly basis, and over a period of time after the subsidy, government has directed the banks to give a finance for the balance amount of at a very nominal rate, that is a 7%, and a very nominal terms and conditions. So after the subsidy, the balance amount, if we calculate the EMI, that comes around 700 to 800 rupees for a 3 kilowatt system. So this system is within the uh, power purchase power of a local customer, and they are targeting 1 crore domestic household in the first phase. So I don't think so that the challenges
Okay.
of sunlights and these kind of issues will be there
Okay.
for this.
Ankit,
Yes, ma'am.
Ankit, the same question to you about how do you convince households to take on the scheme by the government? Yes, there are a lot of benefits to it. You save on the electricity bill costs, you also get subsidies, and there was also this clause where you could sell the energy to the government for a requisite amount that will be fixed by, of course, the officials.
Yeah, good evening, ma'am. It's a very good planning that government has done. Basically, government has not targeted only the customers. Government have a very elaborated view. Like we are having an industrialization which is going very up. We are upcoming with the electric vehicles, so the electricity requirement is also going up. So with this plan, government has tried to reduce the electricity generation which is going from the coal. So they want to move to the renewable energies that government have also targeted. Second, if we talk about for the convincing the customers after this subsidy, as my personal view, we are getting the number of calls. For example, if I talk about the numbers of calls have increased gradually, those who want to get to the installation of rooftops of solar on their rooftop, basically. So as if I talk about main challenges which is coming up currently, they are not having a current view that how to go with it, how to proceed. So first thing the government have to do one thing, they have to basically make the customer educated that what are the processes, like how to log in with the national portal, how to select the vendors, how to go with the subsidies, and how we get the subsidy amount credited in our account. So these are the basic challenges and questions which we are receiving from the date of the announcement of the project from our Honorable Prime Minister, Mr. Narendra Modi ji. So it's a very good move that it will reduce the consumption generation which we are getting from the coal, and it will basically make us dependent upon the renewable energies.
Okay. Jaijit, again coming back to you, the larger goal for the International Solar Alliance, which India is the pioneer of, can there be right now a concretized plan that can be built that perhaps in the next 10 years or 20 years, there is going to be a focus where India can be a self-reliant solar energy consumer which will not need coal or other non-renewable sources to produce energy, and not just being a consumer and being able to be sustainable in this project, but also be exporters of solar energy across the globe?
I think eventually we will be there, but in the short term, it's a very challenging goal because the goalposts are moving. Why are the goalposts moving? Because what my co-panelists just mentioned, that India is a growing economy. Our energy consumptions are growing at a tremendous rate. So we would need all kinds of energy. We will not be able to do away with coal for now, but we are rapidly ramping up our our renewable sources of energy and moving away from the non-renewable ones. So, do keep in mind that for every 1 megawatt of coal-fired power that we are replacing with solar, we need to generate 3 megawatt of solar, because solar can work for only 8 hours. So you would need to have the 3 times the number of panels to be able to match what what coal-fired plants are able to generate, or for that matter, what hydel plants are able to generate. Now we also know that hydel plants have a challenge. They also seem to have an environmental issue. They are apparently the cause of earthquakes and so on and so forth. Solar turns out to be the cleanest in terms of its deployment, but the solar manufacturing also is a very polluting industry. And having said that, we are still reaching self-sufficiency in solar panels. There are many investments that are coming in solar as we speak. Solar cell plants are coming up. A lot of manufacturing plants are coming up. So for sure, we definitely see a path towards complete self-sufficiency, complete Atmanirbhar in solar. But replacing all of our power requirements into a renewable source of power or into solar will still take a lot of time to happen.
Right. Talking about what the cost is of manufacturing solar panels, of buying solar panels, of installing solar panels, also then we'll have to completely change the way the renewable energy capacity utilized by a particular household is calculated, is measured as well. So this, you think this, is there enough infrastructure currently, or are we at this point in time also towards creation of such infrastructure? And it's a demand and supply game. The more the demand, the larger the supply, the larger the manufacturing, the larger jobs that are created, the larger the manufacturing hubs that are created, and vice versa.
You're absolutely right. The demand is almost infinite at this stage in that sense, because we would need gigawatts and gigawatts of energy. We're roughly at 400 gigawatts of energy that the country is generating, out of which renewable energy is still a very small proportion. We do need to replace all the coal-fired plants, and therefore all of this and the future energy requirements has to come from sources such as solar. So we should be targeting about 800 gigawatts of power being generated in the next 5 to 10 years. And therefore, as I mentioned, the demand is almost infinite. It depends on how much we can manufacture. And also, if we can't manufacture, that still does not mean that we do not deploy solar. If we need to import, we need to import. But clearly, the focus should also be to make sure that we can manufacture as much as possible domestically. But it's important that our source of power is cheap, because that gives us a competitive advantage. Every industry gains from a cheaper source of power, and solar is definitely turning out to be cheaper than coal-fired over a period of time, over its entire lifetime. It has a much lower cost of maintenance, and obviously the environmental effects are almost a bonus. You see, the industry is adopting solar not because it is environmentally friendly, it is because it's turning out to be cheaper. And environmental friendliness is almost a byproduct. Whereas for the rest of the society, it's an environmental friendliness which is more important than the cost of solar. What this government has done is a very, very smart move through this solar offering, where they're actually paying less than what would be costing the government or anyone else in setting up a coal-fired plant. As I mentioned, a coal-fired plant costs about 83,000 to 90,000 rupees per kilowatt, whereas here the government is giving about 50,000, 60,000 rupees, I think a maximum of 60,000 rupees for 3 kilowatts. And that's all that the government is spending. Mm-hmm. In terms of land, that's coming free because the rooftop is coming free. So the consumer gains, the citizen gains, the government gains, the environment gains. It's a complete win-win situation that has been created out of this particular project.
Jajit, also this particular scheme is targeted to certain households, the certain income groups. So how is that going to help our economy? How is that going to help our solar generation capacities, keeping in mind that larger percentage of the population, of course, is of a certain segment?
So I'm not completely aware of what is the segmentation of this particular target population that is happening. In fact, I did go out and apply for the solar panels 3 weeks back and have not heard back. It was a very smooth process to apply, but I've not heard back. So I'm sure the processes are being put into place. But personally, I believe if there is segmentation, then all segments of the population do not have access to rooftop. So we end up limiting the impact of this particular program. And therefore, I need to see what the segmentations are. I'm not fully aware of it.
Yeah,
But
and then there are a number of these resident welfare societies, housing societies, who are also being given subsidies. So if there are households, or if you're living in apartments or flats within a particular society, it is then becomes the responsibility of the society to put up solar power plants and solar panels, and then transfer the electricity that is derived out of solar energy into the households. Now, how complicated and complex the system it is, and how long will this infrastructure building will take to ensure that the largest number of households, largest number of housing societies are able to avail of this facility?
It's a matter of time. As a national level politician once told me that the politics of an RW is far more complex than the politics at a national level. So each of these RWAs, housing societies, will have to go through that process. It'll take some time. There will be issues. But I'm sure as human beings and as members of the society, we'll figure out a way forward and be able to solve this issue. It's not a rocket science issue. It's not a complex issue. I think from the government side, they have done as much as possible. It's now up to the responsibility of such groups, such as the RWAs and housing societies, to step forward and be able to execute the last part or the last mile of this project. And there isn't much that the government can do because they don't own these roofs. Now, if it's a personal rooftop, then there is absolutely no issue. And I have a rooftop, and I'm happy to give it away for anything that the government wants to do in terms of clean energy generation. But if it's a common facility, then clearly those challenges come into place and the social dynamics comes into place. Not only that, there will also be an issue in terms of maintenance of the panels, which is who maintains it if it's a common property, because unless the dust is removed from the solar panels, the ability for the solar panels to generate power will come down significantly, and therefore the investments will go waste.
Okay. All right. But there are definitely solutions as the RWAs and the housing societies function in terms of the gathering of funds and then allocating the resources, allocating the facilities, and as per the rules and guidelines that they put forth, which are quite complex, but which are also quite detailed, and as you mentioned, the politics of it all also makes things interesting, and also perhaps a slower moving process. Okay, Parag, quickly getting to understand how does Jaganlight India company function? What is your role in the larger plan that the government has envisaged for solar energy dominant country, and how does this play out in the coming years and months?
Okay, ma'am. Ma'am, as a company, our company is a registered vendor in Uttar Pradesh and Bihar. We are working in the government solar subsidy scheme since 2018. That was the time when the scheme was launched in Uttar Pradesh for the first time. And we have gone through all of the phases. We have seen how the industry has grown. We have seen how the policy has been changed. We have seen how the subsidy process has been gone through. Earlier, there were days when the subsidy used to come in years' time. But now, if we experience the subsidy time in Banaras, recently we have installed so many systems. There, the subsidy has came within 3 days. So, where the impact of the government and the government willpower is there, we have seen, and since the launch of the national portal in August 2022, all these hurdles and the complications have been resolved. And with the launch of the recent PM Surya Ghar Muft Bijli Yojana, we expect that the solar industry is going to be one of the fastest growing industry in the country, and not only the people who are the beneficiaries, but it will also give a huge opportunity for the employment, for the business owners, for the business startups, and overall the economy will grow.
Okay, so Parag, which are these segment of people, segment of society that are being aimed through this solar power program?
Ma'am, we count solar as an alternate source of energy. So wherever there is a requirement of solar energy, solar can be an alternate. Either it is a street side vendor, it is an industrialist, it is a household. They all need electricity, and solar gives them a very cheap source of electricity. If we count a solar unit, it calculates around 2 rupees unit, and if we buy us energy from the discom or any other domestically, they are 6.5 rupees per unit, and for the commercials they are around 8 rupees per unit. So when we calculate and compare the cost of units when compared to the solar, it is the cheapest source of energy. So the challenges which is there is the backup and the storage systems which have to be integrated in the later near future.
Yeah.
So that for that government will bring up other schemes, but this scheme they are targeting for the domestic users to make them the prosumers. That is, they produce the energy and they consume their own energy. And for a period of time, we calculate that within the after the subsidy, the amount if the person don't take the viable gap from the funding for the finance options from the bank, even if he make the down payment for the balance amount of the subsidy, the payback will be within the 3 years, 2.5 to 3 years,
Okay.
and the system life is for 25 years.
Okay, but
The
then
warranty of the
again we're
panels
talking
is
about the cost, and you were giving us an example. Like for example, if you consume 300 kilowatts of energy, and you are
yes,
going
ma'am.
to be given there is no cost to the energy that you consume in a month's
Yes,
time,
ma'am.
which ends up saving you about 2,000 rupees, and
Yes,
which
ma'am.
can then be utilized for paying of loan for the installment of the solar power panels. Again, like I said, 300 kilowatts is going to be the utilization of a household from a particular area, particular region, particular strata of the society. And similarly, the fact that you are going to be targeting a certain segment of the society, which is going to be a large segment of the society, but nonetheless, the fact that there are going to be certain sections, smaller sections of the country, which may not be able to avail of this scheme, or this scheme really is not going to help their cause.
No, ma'am. Government is taking a wide level of publicity measures, and we have recently experienced the same thing in Banaras, where the Banaras was taken as a pilot project, and the PMO directive was being given over there to install 25,000 solar in 2 months, and based on which the hurdles and understanding the complications, this policy has been launched. So over there, in within a small gap of time, around more than 10,000 people have applied for solar over there.
Okay.
And with the launch, so you can understand that where the government willpower is, nothing is impossible.
Fair enough. Okay, Jaideep, I'll come back to you about how there have been parallel solar power energy scheme that has also been launched by the Delhi government, and there are quite the hurdles that are being faced by the Delhi government to launch this scheme, where the Lieutenant Governor has time and again refused to pass the resolution, pass the bill. Can there be a cohesion, a collaboration that is going to be smooth between the central government and the state governments who are trying to do the same thing, who are trying to build renewable energy sources, who are trying to use solar power to help the citizens turn green?
Yeah, I'm not familiar with what are the nuances of the issue that is there between the Lieutenant Governor of Delhi and the government of Delhi. But there clearly is a national policy now and national scheme which should be rolled out nationally, and there is significant amount of money allocation being given. And I totally agree with you that there shouldn't be any friction between various governments, be it state or union or local governments and state governments and so on and so forth, because the same needs to be rolled out at municipal levels, at panchayat raj level, and so on and so forth. And we hope that it's a smooth rollout. Other schemes that we see, for example, rolling out of fiber optic, does run into all of these problems, right of way problems, issues at the panchayati raj level, at the municipal level, and therefore we have been slow in providing broadband connectivity in the rural areas. I clearly and definitely hope that this is not repeated for solar, and that there is a smooth rollout and a smooth coordination between all required agencies,
Okay.
and that policies are well thought out and that they are not misused. Because if they are designed in a manner which is discriminatory or can be misused, then one must ensure that that should not be the case and that should not happen.
Ankit Bugra, quickly coming to you about Greenage India Resources Private Limited. How would it help government's cause of taking this policy far and wide?
Basically, as in Greenage India Resources, we are basically the EPC contractors and manufacturers of solar modules. And the one thing is also important with this scheme is it will also benefit the solar module manufacturers. How? Like in this scheme, the modules which will be used for the subsidy for the installation, the cell used in the module should be manufactured in India. Solar cells which are used in the module. So it will increase the requirement, it will help the industry who are making the big investment in manufacturing the solar cells in India. And we are basically educating the peoples, we are educating the residential welfare associations, societies. Like for the residential welfare associations, government have given that for the common area lighting, they can install the solar power generation system on the rooftops, which is commonly available for all the residents, and they can reduce their bills which they have to pay as in maintenance charges in the residential welfare associations. And now moving to the cost of the projects, if I talk about, some states are giving the additional subsidies in addition to the state central government subsidies. Like if we talk about in the Uttar Pradesh, a 3 kilowatt system is coming up at a cost of 1,85,000, and a central government assistance is of 78,000, with a state government assistance is of 30,000. So the total subsidy which is coming up to be 1,08,000, and the cost of the project is 1,85,000. So in a cost of just 70,000, we are getting a unit generation of 300 units per month. And if I talk about of the saving part for 300 units calculated by 6 rupees, it comes to be 1800 rupees of savings per month, which is government fee. And it is not a something like which is given for 1 year, 2 years. It is a permanent solution which we are getting by installing the rooftop on our solar rooftop on our roofs. Okay, and now moving on to the basically government policy that which we are getting in solar rooftop is literally a very, very progressive move which has given, and it is also boosting up new startups as well.
Okay, fair enough. I think we've had a very cohesive, interesting, enlightening conversation about how solar panels, how solar energy can be then brought forth into a larger agenda of the government to reach every single household, and how that allows for a grander plan of the government to make India renewable energy sufficient.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.